Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back for another episode of the Texas Hill Country Authors Podcast. Today, I'm thrilled to have with me Paul McGrath. And as I explained to Paul, our paths have almost touched for about 50 years. So we're going to have some fun looking back, and we're going to look forward into Paul's writing and what he may have down the road. Paul, with that incredibly long-winded introduction, first of all, welcome to the podcast. And thank you so much for taking the time to visit with me today.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me.
So could you tell us about where you grew up, where you went to college, and what you did in the first part of your professional life?
I was born and raised in Clue, Texas, on the Texas Gulf Coast, and went to Texas A&M. After I graduated from college, I began as a journalist, reporter. I worked as a basically police. When you work at a small paper, you do a little bit of everything. But police beat was more or less my primary beat in Conroe, Texas. I had done mostly sports in college, so I wanted to get back into sports. So I went to the Lubbock Avalanche Journal and was on the sports desk there, and later got an opportunity to be editor of a weekly paper in Lockhart, and a fun little place, great barbecue. My editor in Conroe lured me back, and so I came back and was a reporter and then managing editor there. And then I guess I sort of went to the big leagues at the Houston Chronicle, and I was on the news copy desk there for 37 years. And along the way, I picked up a master's degree from Marist College in New York.
And maybe I was thinking about is there really a direct line from your life as a journalist to your life as an author now, or were there some twists and turns in that?
Yes and no. I had done, even while I was a copy editor, I had done some writing at the Chronicle. And my wife, maybe she's biased, but she was impressed with my writings, and you need to sit down and write a book. I retired in 2019, and she kept egging me on that now you've got time to do a little writing. But yeah, there were a little bit of something that happened in the news, I guess, was like the ultimate spark here. During my career at the Chronicle, I had covered shuttle explosions, wars, terrorist attacks, hurricanes, but there was something about the tragic shooting at the elementary school in Uvalde that just really hit me. It just stayed with me. And what was the frustrating was the response to it. We intelligent human beings couldn't come up with an answer. There was no solution for this, or no good solution. So I said, I don't know. It just sort of appeared to me in my sleep or wherever it came from. I said, what if somebody came from somewhere else and they had an idea? So that's sort of where Left was born.
I love to talk to authors about the craft of writing, and you've obviously been involved in the craft of writing probably since high school, maybe even before that. I've written numerous books, nonfiction books, largely in the business context, and I've tried to write fiction, but never successfully completed one. But when I do write fiction, my process is the story plays out in my head, and
Yeah.
I feel like I'm just recording what I see. Is
Yeah.
yours like that? Is it different? How do you close your eyes and it just happens?
In this situation, that it was very much like that. It was like December of 2023. I teach at A&M now. That's my retirement job. And fall semester was over, and this just all culminated. And I just sat down and I just started going. And I would work 4, 5, 6 hours a day. And it's like you said, the story was there, and it would just sort of play out in my fingers on the keyboard. Now, I did do an outline and tried to help me keep organized and who the characters were and spelling of their names and things like that, so there'd be some consistency. But yeah, a lot of it was just kind of you develop the characters, and then they help drive the story as well.
So do you write in the morning? Do you write in the evening? Do you write when the spirit moves you? Do you have a muse? How about that part of it?
Tom, I have a nice lake that is like 10 steps from where I'm sitting right now. So if the bass are biting, that may preclude things. But generally speaking, I would spend some time in the morning, have my little lunch, and then I would take some time in the afternoon, depending on if I had any grading to do, of course. But yeah, I would usually set aside some late morning. I got to have my adult survival beverage in the beginning of the day so you can get going. But yeah, late morning and early afternoon. Yep, yep, I hear you. And if the Astros are playing well, then I would stop to watch the Astros.
Man, it sounds like we have the same morning routine. You chose for a location of the book Mississippi, and I talked to a lot of Southern authors, and we all grew up in different places, and it's a little bit different throughout the South. So I really was intrigued why Mississippi, being a native Texan.
Several reasons. One, I'm sort of intrigued. My stepson went to the University of to Ole Miss, University of Mississippi, and sort of intrigued with the mystique of the Southern authors that came from there. And in fact, one of the locations in the book is a little town of Eudora, which is named for Eudora Welty. But also, we would go. My wife and I would go go to Oxford, and I took note of even though there's a highway here, there's a lot of empty space. There's a lot of rural area, and Tom, that's a lot of good places for spaceships to land. There was a lot of trees and whatever, so that those in my mind that was hey, those are good landing spots. Plus, Mrs. You find out in left the main character Anton. This is his third tour on Earth. First couple of tours were like in the Northeast, and now he's been assigned to the southern area. And Mississippi is close to the space facility at Huntsville, Alabama. It's not too far away from Kennedy Space Center, and there are a number of military bases close by. And so Anton, who is from the planet Xylodon, the Xylodonians are keeping careful eye on Earth. And so there was enough things in the area to pique their interest and to assign a covert team to keep watch.
So the Xylodonians are not really fully described or in your book, although I'm sure they're fully formed in your mind. Why did you leave that part open? Is it so people like me could really insert our own interpretation or something else?
Exactly. Yes, certainly didn't have a broad game plan as an author, and this was my first one. But that was one key element that I decided upon is I would keep the Xylodonian appearance somewhat vague. I said they were humanoid and such height or whatever, so that it allows the reader to participate in the story and let them form their idea in their mind's eye what the Xylodonians look like. And of course, the Zaldonians have some technology that allows them to shapeshift, so it doesn't really matter anyway. They could be whatever.
So I was very intrigued by the event or a series of events which sparked you to write this book. And one of the things that you have made clear in your comments is this is not an anti gun book. I'm a native Texan. My parents were school teachers. Uvalde affected me nearly the same way. I'm also a gun owner.
Yeah.
And
Right.
we have that tradition here in this state. And we don't want to be anti-gun, but we want a solution. And so it really struck me that this book is almost a stop and think book. And how did you try to guide that discussion or at least that interpretation?
Yeah. Just to piggyback on what you said, in addition to my journalism career, I've been teaching at various colleges since 1990, UH, A&M, US Clear Lake. And it's very odd now that when I go, or at least odd to me, when I step into a new classroom, one of the first things I do is look around to see what are the escapes in case something bad happened. And so that's something in the back of my mind as well. But in the course of developing the plot, Anton, the main character, develops this really strong relationship with a gentleman a World War II Navy veteran named Ezra Gator Hopkins. And Ezra becomes more or less like a father figure to Anton in some way. And Ezra introduces Anton to his eventual love interest, Ellie. And but then something tragic happens, and Anton is frustrated that humankind can't seem to come up with a solution, which was something that had been done decades, if not centuries before on their planet, on his planet. And so he sort of forms a plan in his mind, and then he makes a big splash and carries it out.
One of the other themes in the book seems to be empathy and how the aliens have more empathy for mankind or humankind than perhaps we have for each other. Could you
Absolutely.
elaborate on this concept and maybe how you intended it to play out in the book and maybe how it's played out for other readers?
Oh, absolutely. As I mentioned the relationship between Anton and Ezra. Eventually, another little piece of the book is Anton's cover story is being a botanist, and so he's out in the woods gathering whatever things that botanists do, and he rescues a dog that's been abandoned, and he does a lot of takes to the vet, nurses it to health, et cetera, et cetera, and he develops a lot of empathy for humankind through this little four-legged creature as well. So that is part of it, and it's his connection to the human. He sees how the humans could be better than they are, that it could be done. He looks at his own plans. We did it, you can do it too. And as I said, that's the what life suffused to what he does. One of the main climatic parts of the book.
I'm change the focus just a little bit
Sure.
because one of the things about being an author is writing the book is one step in the process, an important step, but
Wow.
there are other steps. And so I
Yeah.
really wanted to use that to introduce your relationship with Stony Creek Publishing. How was that part of the process for you? What's it like to work with Lauren? And could you say a few words about that?
Oh, absolutely. I've been very fortunate to have this connection with Stony Creek. I was Lauren Steffi, the CEO of Stony Creek. He worked at the Houston Chronicle as a business columnist. So we've known each other for some time. We're both Aggies. And in fact, one of Lauren's books served as a source on a paper I had to do when I was getting my master's degree. So we've had a connection for a while. And I had edited a book for another friend of mine, and I asked him, "How do you get this book?" And he told me about Stony Creek. So I sort of rekindled my relationship with Lauren in that way. And he's just great to work with. He's a wordsmith. He knows the process. He forced me to use the Oxford comma, which I've been killing over the years, but as a journalist, but that's another story. But yes, as far as the flip side, once you sit there and you write a book, and you think, okay, now what? Now it comes to the whole publishing and marketing end of it. And Lauren and Stony Creek have done a great job. Leslie Barrett, the publicist, she got me this interview. And so it's getting people to know about your little book is just another part of the process, one that I was completely unaware of.
Well, let's explore the Oxford comma because we've got a little bit of time. I don't know if I consciously knew of the Oxford comma, but I have been dead set against it my entire life.
Yeah,
And so I get these comments from time to time. It
yeah.
sounds like you got. Could you explain what the Oxford comment is and at least why people like you and me maybe didn't use it?
Essentially, it's also called the serial comma. And when you have a series of elements like an apple, an orange, and a pear, and or you say Tom took the apple, orange, and pear to town, the Oxford comma would be come before the and. The Associated Press style book absolutely bans the use of the serial comma or Oxford comma just you go straight to the end. And so for 4 decades plus, I've been editing staff and wire copy. And whenever I saw an Oxford comma, boom, shoot it down.
That answers the question because somewhere in high school, I had a teacher say, never put a comma before the word and, ever.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the most sacrosanct rule there was. And it turns out that there's a different rule if you have a different interpretation of it.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
it's like the AP style book used to ban the word hopefully forever, and now it allows it. And it's like, wow, I have to retrain myself.
my wife is from England, and out of college, she became a copy editor at the Financial Times in London. And I asked her once, said, "Do you know what the AP style is?" She goes, "Oh, yeah, everybody knows that."
Yeah,
So we wrote from that at the FT. I have to assume you worked at the battalion.
I did. I was on the sports desk at the battalion and was sports editor back in the old Emery Ballard days.
Roy Bragg was one of my best friends from high school.
Ah, great guy, great guy.
But I was wondering if you could talk to us about the role of a student newspaper. I will tell you, to that other place. So we had the Daily Texan.
Yep.
But what's the role of a student newspaper? What's the role for people like you who are training to be a professional journalist? What's the role for the customer or the audience, someone like me? And then is there a bigger role for a student newspaper at a university today?
I think that, of course, I'm biased, but I think a student newspaper is extremely important. It gives the students a firsthand look at how information is gathered, whether it's photos, words, stories, whatever, and how and to produce that information into a it was almost a daily product when I was there. I think it only is printed a couple of times a week now. Sadly, that's the way things are going. But even the digital atmosphere, the environment, the kids are getting that kind of experience. I keep telling my students that you need to become Swiss Army knife communicators because you have to be able to operate in the print world, the broadcast world, and the social media world. And this is a great way for these kids to get that kind of experience. In addition to that, it's the networking. I, when I was a sports writer for the battalion, I would go cover all kinds of events. And Tom, you remember this, the Southwest Conference. And I would be with these professional reporters from the Post, the Morning News, and the Chronicle. So I was able to chat with those guys, find out what the real world was like, and make a lot of connections that helped me later on. Oh, yeah, I remember that guy. So the student newspapers, even now, are breaking some really great stories. I follow the battalion on Facebook and get to see a lot of the achievements that they do and that the paper does. And so they're doing some investigative type stories that professional newspapers or mediums have not jumped onto. That said, it's kind of sad that administration sometimes don't really understand the role and what have you of the student publications. One of A&M's previous presidents was trying to make the battalion online only, not realizing that the print side of the paper had advertising contracts that they had signed for a certain period. So you couldn't just end those contracts. Yeah, there's a little bit of lack of understanding there, I think, sometimes.
What about the sense of, and I'm going to speak from the reader or customer perspective, of a daily student newspaper really bringing together a true university community? And I would point you to perhaps a different example. When I was a senior at UT, Berkey Breathed was the cartoonist.
Ah,
And it
yeah,
wasn't Bloom County. It wasn't
yeah,
called Bloom County yet, but
yeah.
everyone waited every day to see his cartoons. He was that great in college. How can a newspaper really bring literally 20, 30, 40,000 people together even for a moment?
Wow, yeah, that is such a great question, and it's one that I deal with. I try to manhandle as a professor teaching a journalism class. I think papers still do a great job of one thing that a newspaper or magazine will do. It will address a kaleidoscope of subjects on almost daily basis. Whereas when you go online to get some information, it's almost like a a straight tunnel or a real straight shot to what you're looking for. You're not looking to anything on the periphery. But as you're flipping through a newspaper or a magazine, you'll find, oh, here's a story about this barbecue contest that I didn't know was going on. There's or the school board meeting that's coming up that I might be interested in. So it's more of a shotgun approach of information. And I don't know who said it, but there was one person who commented that the Daily New York Times has more words in it than all the words Shakespeare ever produced. So in addition to being, you're hoping it's trustworthy, because we're in this day and age, we're battling disinformation and misinformation nearly every day. So you hope it's a trustworthy, credible source that can give you that information, but also sort of give you a broadened horizon approach to life.
Paul, unfortunately, we are near the end of our time for this episode, but I wanted to end by asking if our listeners wanted to connect with you, find out more information about Left, and maybe a tease on what you have down the road, because I understand this may be the first of a trilogy,
Yes, sir.
episode of a trilogy. Could you tell us all about that?
A&M Press published Left, and it has a website, Texas A&M University Press, so you can obtain it there. It's also available on Amazon. So I think nearly everybody knows how to use Amazon these days. So those are the two primary places that you could find it. Stony Creek has a website, but I would say the other two places are the best. See, I warned you about the lawnmower guys, and now they show up. Yes, Left is the first in a trilogy, and so there's further adventures for Anton and Ellie. And as far as a central theme, or it also contributes to the empathy I tried to create, is good old coffee. And in one of the later books, coffee becomes a underground smuggling item. Yeah, that's. I just hope people can have some fun with these books, enjoy it, and maybe read them over a cup of coffee.
Paul, this has been a delightful visit. I hope we can continue this conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tom.